everyone, and welcome to our spotlight session at the Asia Clean Energy Forum titled Photovoltaics, Scaling Up Deployment of Floating Photovoltaics in Southeast Asia. My name is Emily Kloss, and I am a communications coordinator for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, supporting their partnerships with the United States Agency for International Development, also known as USAID. Now, before we begin, I did want to review a few housekeeping items with you all that you should be seeing on your screen right now. The first is that we will have 3 presentations and a panel discussion today where our panelists will answer your questions. If you wish to ask questions, please use the Q&A function during the event, and this can be found under the agenda module on the web app. Your questions will be addressed during the panel discussion. We've also included some screenshots of where you can find the Q&A button and where you can click to ask a question, and you can see that with the red boxes and the red arrows on your screen currently. Michelle, next slide, please. This event is hosted by the USAID and NREL partnership, where USAID and NREL partner together to deliver clean, reliable, and affordable power to the developing world. The USAID NREL partnership addresses critical aspects of deploying advanced energy systems in developing countries through policy, planning, and deployment support, along with global technical toolkits. You can visit our website to learn more and subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date on partnership activities. A link to our website, our newsletter, along with our resources shared during this event will be displayed on your screen in a pop-up box later during the event. And you can also access the links through the related publications posted in the activity feed of your event screen. Next slide, please. USAID and NREL have 4 global technical platforms which provide free state-of-the-art support on common and critical challenges to scaling up advanced energy systems. These platforms include the Renewable Energy Explorer, Greening the Grid, the International Jobs and Economic Development Impacts Model, also known as IJEDI, and the Resilient Energy Platform. We encourage you to visit the links here on this slide and also in the resources shared to learn more and access these toolkits for your benefit. Next slide, please. Next, I am very excited to introduce our speakers for today's event. First, we have Amanda J. Vandendoel, who is the Sustainable Energy and Safeguards Team Lead for USAID's Regional Development Mission for Asia, also known as RDMA. We have Zika Gajanku, who is a decision support analysis researcher at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And then there's me, Emily Kloss, who will be moderating today's session. We have Mr. Chachai Mawang, who will be showing a recording presentation, who is also the director of the Hydro and Renewable Energy Power Plant Development Division at the Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand, also known as EGAT. And then we have Ms. Sasha, who is the Asia Pacific Director at SunGrow. And we have Uma Rajarantham, who is the Vice President and Global Head of Applied Research and Collaboration at Enzyme Global Solutions, who will be joining us for our panel discussion today. Next slide, please. Now, Clayton, we can go ahead and launch the poll. And before I turn it over to Amanda to deliver welcome remarks, we did want you all to fill out this quick poll question here, which you should be seeing on your screen very shortly. Please take a moment to read the question and deliver your answer. Now, the question is, what is driving floating photovoltaic deployment in the Southeast Asia and broader Asia Pacific region? Is it cost, cheaper than other technologies, government support, land use concerns, environmental considerations, or all of the above? Okay, I'm seeing some people starting to vote. Yes, let's go ahead and share those results on the screen, please, Clayton. And then we're going to give it about 15 more seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, please do so now. Okay, let's go ahead and close down the poll. All right. looks like it was pretty close, but the preceding answer was all of the above. So thanks everyone for your participation in our poll, and our speakers will be covering what exactly drives FPV deployment in Southeast Asia in their upcoming presentations. And with that, Michelle, you can switch to the next slide, please. I will now pass the mic to Amanda J. Vandendoel from USAID's Regional Development Mission for Asia. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Amanda Vandendoel, and I'm the Sustainable Energy and Safeguards Team Lead for the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID's Regional Development Mission for Asia, based in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm really pleased to welcome you to today's spotlight session at the Asia Clean Energy Forum to learn more about key issues and solutions to scale up floating photovoltaic deployment in Southeast Asia. Before we get started, I'd like to provide some context around the Advanced Energy Partnership for Asia, which is a collaboration between USAID and the United States Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL, that supports the US government's Clean Edge Asia initiative. Clean Edge Asia builds on the work of Asia Edge to align government and private sector resources to advance sustainable energy growth in the region. Clean Edge Asia contributes to the priorities outlined under the Indo-Pacific Strategy and the US government and USAID targets and plans outlined under our climate strategy, which we were proud to release this year at Earth Day. The Advanced Energy Partnership for Asia assists partner countries to transform their energy sectors by addressing the technical challenges associated with transitioning to sustainable, secure, and market-driven energy sectors. This partnership works collaboratively with governments in Asia to conduct research, analysis, and capacity building to deploy advanced energy systems at speed and scale. For today's session, our presenters will focus on floating photovoltaic deployment in Asia and around the world. Solar power generation projects are expanding across Southeast Asia. And while they're a great solution for helping the region's power systems to decarbonize, solar power companies are finding themselves competing for land with agriculture, industrial use, and expanding populations. An innovative alternative is to place floating solar panels in lakes, dams, reservoirs, and in the sea. Floating PV plants are an advantageous option for land-scarce Southeast Asian countries to continue to develop utility-scale solar power. Mostly utilized on existing hydroelectric dams and reservoirs, these PV plants can connect to existing power grids using the connection points already available at the hydroelectric facilities and can promote greater grid stability and flexibility. Despite growing interest in floating PV systems and increasing deployment in Asia, there is not much in the way of robust information on the co-benefits and potential drawbacks of these systems. This plays a part in limiting the technology's deployment. Today, we're going to investigate further the pros and cons of floating PV, and hopefully we'll come to a better understanding on how we can apply this technology more readily to the region's best advantage. In today's session, we're going to take a look at existing policy, economic, environmental, and cultural barriers, findings from recent NREL modeling work on the potential operational benefits of pairing floating photovoltaics and hydropower, international best practices that can be adopted for Southeast Asia, plans for high-resolution floating PV technical potential assessments, and perspectives from grid operators and developers on floating PV deployment in Southeast Asia. Thank you very much for your participation today. We welcome your questions, insights, and your ideas in today's session. I'll now pass the mic back over to Emily so we can begin today's event.
Thank you, Amanda. Now, before we begin our technical presentations today, we did want to launch one more poll. Michelle, would you be able to kindly go to the next slide, please? Okay, and then Clayton, can we launch that poll? Okay. All right, so this question is, what are the main barriers to FPV deployment in the Southeast Asia and broader Asia Pacific region? Is it costs, regulatory requirements, environmental concerns, all of the above, or other? Okay, and Clayton, can you also launch these results on the screen again, please, if you're not already? Okay, we're starting to see some results come in. Okay, we're going to give it about 10 or 15 more seconds to get in your answers if you haven't already. Okay, Clayton, you can go ahead and close that down. And it looks like the highest answer was all of the above by a landslide, 80%. So thank you again for your participation in our poll. Michelle, you can switch to the next slide, please. Oh, that's okay. Actually, Zika can go ahead and begin sharing. So I'll now turn it over to Zika Gajanku, who is the decision support analysis researcher at NREL, and she will kick off our technical presentations today. And following Zika, we'll have Mr. Chichai Mawang and Ms. Sasha present. So over to you, Zika.
Great, thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone for joining this session today. We're very excited to share some of the really exciting work that has been happening around floating solar deployment in the region and really just create a space for some meaningful conversation. So as Emily mentioned, my name is Sika Gajanku. I'm a researcher at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And my presentation today will be kind of more a framing presentation, highlighting some of the work we've done, but really just setting the stage for the follow-on presentations we have from various developer and then a system operator from Thailand who is really speaking to experience about deploying FPV in the Southeast Asia region and the broader Asia Pacific region. So my presentation will provide a broad overview of NREL's floating solar research, some of our work thinking about the policy considerations, and thinking back to those poll responses that, some regulatory aspects also inform FPV deployment as we would expect they would. Also touch on some of our recent modeling work. We actually just published a report today on some of our hybrid FPV hydropower modeling work. And then I'll round out my presentation with a highlight for what's coming up from NREL's perspective in terms of our FPV research. So at the broad level, FPV has garnered a lot of interest globally, but especially specifically in the Asia Pacific region for a lot of reasons that some of the other speakers will touch on. But it's becoming increasingly competitive in the market, but potential adopters still have questions about the underlying technology itself, the scale and range of its benefits, some of its potential drawbacks, and also how to analyze it properly. So a number of years ago, as NREL started seeing the growing interest in this technology based on specific conversations with different partners in the region, we thought critically about the different areas that we could explore research in this related to this technology. So this figure highlights 4 of those main buckets. The first is analysis, so really thinking about the potential impacts of FPV deployment on a broad power grid, and also thinking about developing tools to help different groups of people really analyze the potential value of the technology, whether it's a standalone system or it's a hybrid system. And then the second is the implementation bucket. So thinking about really assessing the range of opportunities for FPV deployment. And so this is where we've done quite a bit of work thinking about the technical potential assessments, because that's often the first step in really assessing a really upper bound estimate of technology potential. And so we've done some of that work focused on the US. We've done a global study, and we will be launching, or we have launched a Southeast Asia focused technical potential assessment that I'll touch on later in my presentation. And then part of this also includes considering the policy and regulatory aspects of FPV deployment. So what are the kinds of, what is the existing policy environment in different contexts, and how can that shape how much FPV is deployed in different countries and different regions. And then the third bucket is around modeling and monitoring and evaluation. So this is thinking about once you actually start to have more and more FPV systems being installed, can we collect data from these installations to really understand the performance of these systems and how it may vary across different contexts? And then a key part here as well is understanding the potential environmental impacts around this technology. There's been a lot of excitement, but there's also granted a lot of questions that remain about the potential environmental impacts of deploying FPV systems on different water body types, and more thinking about the water ecosystem, but also just the broader ecosystem as well. And then the final one is thinking more about technology research. So starting to think about the research and development side, and are there innovations that can still be made when it comes to the FPV technology itself? And do some of these innovations need to be tailored to the specific context? So thinking about, countries or regions that are more prone to different kinds of extreme weather events, how does that shape the research that we do? So kind of thinking about those different buckets, we've been doing some really exciting work focused on the Southeast Asia region, and we published this policy report last year that was looking at the potential policy barriers and also drivers to FPV deployment in the Southeast Asia region. And really, we came to FPV, I mentioned earlier, because of the demand and the requests from conversations with different partners in the region. And FPV has become particularly attractive in the region because of many different things, some of which were highlighted in the poll responses, but it includes the region's really ambitious renewable energy targets. The region also has very abundant solar and hydropower resources, and also the potential land use benefits, the possibility of saving land to be able to use for other things and for other priorities, whether it's agriculture or housing. And then also key here is the opportunity to hybridize with hydropower generation. The region has significant existing hydropower capacity. So in as much as you can take advantage and leverage existing resources, whether it's the hydro plant itself or the existing transmission, that has made FPV really attractive. And then finally, the ability to diversify power generation as well. And that's kind of going with decreased reliance on imported and really expensive fossil fuels. And so thinking about these potential policy drivers and barriers, one thing we wanted to look at, even kind of separate from the barriers, is what has worked in different countries and what are the different instruments that were used to really drive FPV deployment. So we had some examples here. I won't go into too much detail, but we see that from China to Japan to South Korea, we saw different approaches. We saw a mix of government support and incentives at the very beginning because FPV was very new at that point and very novel. So we saw a lot of investment in research and development support, a lot of investment in pilot and funding pilot and demonstration projects. And we also saw these different countries and different markets really trying to find the best way to support this technology while also, thinking about the broader emerging energy technology market. And then the last thing I also highlight, especially with South Korea here, is that the government really invested in growing a local job creating FPV industry. So thinking beyond deployment to think about how many jobs can it create, can we foster innovation and really then have the ripple effects of employment across the whole supply chain as opposed to just the deployment aspect of FPV. And then we also looked at other examples from other countries and kind of thinking about the more emerging FPV markets. We looked at India, Netherlands, and Taiwan, and kind of we see kind of, again, similar government incentives, but we saw mixed success. We saw that in Taiwan, there were very, very generous government incentives. So there was almost a lesson there in a need to not over-incentivize participation, because then you may have a situation where the grid is not able to integrate all of the FPV generation that could come online. So now shifting to the barriers a bit, we also kind of looked at a range of barriers. I don't have time to talk through each of them, but I wanted to highlight a few. So on the environmental and cultural consideration side of things, we saw two main things. So one is really, again, that question and lack of certainty about the potential impacts, ecological impacts of FPV installation, and how that may increase public opposition, but also lengthen the environmental review process. For a lot of agencies, this may be the first time that they were reviewing an FPV application, and also there's not as much research or as much robust research on the potential environmental impacts. So that could be a barrier. So here, kind of encouraging different decision makers to really think about investing in research that can start to answer some of those questions, and also encouraging collaboration between developers and research institutions so that we can start to collect data from existing FPV installations. And then the second bucket is around public buy-in. Public buy-in and community support is often very critical to, deployment of any projects, but especially with renewables, really wanting to work directly with the communities and as much as possible, including them from the very beginning in these projects is key to their success, but also key to sharing, the knowledge about the range of benefits of FPV. For some communities and some people, they even have never heard about floating solar. It is still a relatively new technology. So really investing in that education and outreach from the beginning is key. And then next is kind of the hybrid related considerations here as well. This is especially kind of important in the Southeast Asia region, given that there is a lot of interest in hybrid FPV hydropower systems specifically. There's a lot of excitement, but there haven't been that many projects. And so there's still a lot of questions about, how different ownership models could impact operation. For example, if different entities own the FPV system versus the hydro system, and a different agency oversees the reservoir as well, how do all of those pieces come together to really optimize operation and optimize, the outcomes for all of the stakeholders involved? And part of this also kind of raises a workforce issue as well. Again, it's a new field and an emerging field, so it will take years to build up that workforce. And granted, we could really leverage the hydropower and solar PV industries, and there's a lot of transferable skills here. But when we're thinking about barriers, we also thought about how there's a lack of know-how on actually operating these hybrid plants, and the need to invest in developing best practices around that, but also invest in training and upskilling staff on this emerging kind of hybrid configuration. So with that, the next part of my presentation is highlighting some work that we did really focused on hybrids. So we looked at the potential operational benefits of hybridizing FPV with hydropower. And to do this, we studied 3 model systems. So we looked at a hydropower only system seen to the left in this figure that didn't have any PV in the generation mix. So it was hydro and thermal generation only. We looked at a standalone FPV system that had FPV, hydro, and thermal generation, but the operation between the hydro and the FPV was separate, it was not coordinated. And then we looked at a full hybrid system which is to the right in the figure, where we're assuming that the operators of the hydro and the FPV are able to coordinate and essentially optimize operation of that joint system. And we studied this by kind of incorporating or fixing some transmission constraints in the system to see if curtailment would change for these different systems, and see whether hydropower generation would change for these different systems. And to explore this research question, we used an NREL tool called Engage. It's a web-based modeling platform that allows multi-energy sectoral planning. And we focused on quantifying those differences in PV and hydropower generation. The figure is a screenshot of the user interface. So it's a very kind of easy to use tool. And we picked this tool specifically because we plan to publish this model and to encourage collaboration with others who might be interested in exploring this issue. But at the high level, and I won't go into the details of the results too much, we will link to our report so you can read it in more detail later. But in general, we saw that compared to a standalone FPV system, by hybridizing with hydropower, you're able to see several benefits. I'm highlighting just 3 here, but we also looked at benefits for different timescales and benefit for different FPV system sizes. looked at a range of different kind of scenarios. And we saw that in general, you are reducing PV curtailment by hybridizing FPV with hydro. So we're essentially avoiding the waste of solar generation. And so in the figure here, you see that, throughout the year, really, because on the top you have hydropower generation throughout the year, and on the bottom you have FPV generation for the standalone versus the hybrid system. We see that the hybrid system consistently produces, or this is dispatched at a higher level throughout the year. And then if we look at the top, we see that the hydropower generation for the full hybrid system compared to the standalone, it shifts quite a bit. And basically what this tells us was that by having that hybridization, you reduce curtailment. Okay. Great. So we are able to also conserve water as well. And I'll end with some of our upcoming work. So beyond that hybrid work, right now our focus is really on developing a really detailed technical potential assessment of FPV in Southeast Asia. And we will be leveraging NREL's RE Data Explorer tool. And this will allow us to assess the potential in the region, but we are also hoping to identify a short list of FPV opportunities as well. And this work will be kind of completed within the next year, and we look forward to sharing the results with everyone. And I'll wrap up with our overall takeaways. FPV is a very exciting place in the region right now, but more research is needed to understand the environmental and ecological impacts. Our results show us that hybridization offers several benefits at different timescales, and also that enabling policies are key to FPV deployment, and they must be done in coordination with broader power sector planning efforts. This is a snapshot of some of our FPV team at NREL, and I'm happy to answer any questions during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thanks, Zika. And as a reminder, you can review any of the publications that Zika talked about today, including the FPV report that was released today in the pop-up box that should have popped up on your screen about 10 minutes ago, and also in the resources and publications tab. So our next presenter is Mr. Chichaima Wong, who is the director of the Hydro and Renewable Energy Power Plant Development Division at the Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand, also known as EGAT. Mr. Chichai was unfortunately unable to make it to our event today, so he has recorded his presentation to share with you all. So let's begin and show his presentation.
I'm going to give you a presentation about the EGAT hydropower solar hybrid project, which is a part of ongoing effort to moving toward to the carbon neutrality of Thailand. My presentation is covered the six topic action in slide. I'm going to begin with the EGAT business incurrence. Then I will talk about the Thailand Power Development Plans. Next is our development guidelines. And after that, I will explain about the working principle of the hydropower solar hybrid, and deep dive into the pilot project as seen from them. Finally, it's our EGAT potential and future developments. Let's start with the EGAT business. EGAT is a state-owned enterprise under the Ministry of Energy. We respond for the generation and transmission for the Thailand. Now we have the generation about the 16 gigawatt and purchased from some the IPP, APP, and some neighboring country about the 30 gigawatts. The transmission line we have across the country about the 37,000 circuit kilometers. We also have the 7 affiliated companies to invest in the latest business, consist of the Red Group, ECO, EGAT International, ECAP, EGAT Diamond, InnoPower, and InnoSpace. Following the global energy trend, EGAT had to encourage more renewable energy to transform the power plants by increasing the efficiency and flexibility. to enhance the transmission system with the grid modernization. Moreover, to explore opportunity to enter the new business such as the EV and energy storage. As you see on the graph, the overall energy demand in Thailand had tendency to increase when compared to in the past year. And the new peak demand is in April this year is about 30 gigawatts per year. Under the current power development plans, the power capacity will increase to 77 gigawatts in the year 2037. It sets the share of the renewable energy more than 30% and reduce the reliance on fossil. Renewable capacity comes from many energy sources such as biomass, biogas, solar, wind, waste, hydro, and one of them is the hydropower hybrid operated by EGAT, which total 2,725 megawatts. Some of you may know that renewable energy is not stable due to natural uncertainty and small efficiency. So we have idea to develop the renewable project to be cheaper, more stable, and not affect to the community and environment. We have set up the development guidelines for our project, with the low cost, high stability, and eco-friendly. How to be the low cost? We can reduce the feasible price by the competitive with other marketing by we utilize the water surface of the gas reservoir. So the project site can save cost of the land procurement. We decide to the maximum existing capacity use of the hydropower plants that we can save the cost of main equipment for the grid connection. Since the dam is multi-purpose, mainly for the irrigation and agriculture, some facilities such as transmission line, transformer, we can share for the maximum utilization for all that equipment. In addition, project site, it should be achieve the economy of scale for the optimized fixed cost of the project. According to that study, the scale should be around 30 megawatts. So the three main things that I do, we can reduce the cost so much. Next is for high stability. We will create firm green energy with smart technology in order to reduce the intermittency of renewable energy. We divide in three phases. First is we will increase for the flexibility. We will combine hydro and solar power for the hybrid generation and controlled by the energy management system, or we call it EMS. It's more flexible operation to demand response during the whole day as required. Next phase, we will create for stability. After having the flexibility, more combined with battery system to enhance the stability generation. It enables smooth hybrid operation and can enable for the time shifting energies from day to night, allow system to provide more power longer. The phase 3, phase security. We will build the RE control center, or we call RECC, to control renewable plants across the country with one platform. This center is able to forecast and manage renewable energy in advance by integrating with the AI technology. It can ensure RE security of the nation in the future. And for the last one, for the eco-friendly that we do, it's very important to develop for the project which does not have negative impact for the surrounding community and environments. In order to do that, we conduct the course of practice and carry out for the elemental safety assessment, we call COP and ESA. Also, we use the eco-friendly materials such as the HDPE pontoon. It had a good grade quality that is safe for the aquatic animal. Another thing, we select the project site or unused water supply of the ICAT dam. We will not affect the use of agriculture as well as for the local fishing and other community activities. In addition, we improve the community quality of life and stimulate local economy with a new landmark, which will boost for the local tourism and lead to the sustainable livelihood. Hydro floating solar hybrids is a combination of the hydropower and floating solar power. It's controlled by the energy management system to make the power generation more flexible and efficient. Moreover, this hybrid system has a weather forecast to know how much solar power in S1. According to the concept, solar power is mainly generated during the daytime, while hydropower is reserved for the nighttime or the period of the no sunlight. The hybrid system manages power generation based on the natural condition. This will make maximum use of the hydro and solar power and also increase more generation efficiency. On the graph, you can see current daily electricity profile. Mainly, hydropower is served for the peak demand in each period in the morning, afternoon, and nighttime, as shown in the dark blue. But with the hybrid system, solar power can provide for the day peak as a general and to keep more hydropower for the night peak as seen in the light blue line. In the future, the battery will include to a hybrid system also. We will increase more power and more longer to peak demand. Energy management system or EMS is the smart technology to integrate the information of the weather forecast to automatically monitor, control, and optimize the performance of the hybrid system. So, main function of the system, it has three parts with the data integration, data analysis, and automation. Data integration is correct to integrate real-time data required for the accurate power generating planning, and then step to the data analysis for forecast the effective power generation management. For the automation, it offers the automatic operations for monitoring, controlling of the hybrid system. For the picture on the right hand is shown for the dashboard for the monitor and control of the EMS. And this shows for the network diagram of the EMS. There are two operation modes when we have on mode and off mode. When we on, this process will start with collecting the data of the hybrid operation which you forecast and then set via the OPC and EIS server to analyze for the power generation on the cloud. And after that, sending back command to the EMS again for operating the power plants. In an automatic mode, operator can select between the local and remote control. System enable plan monitoring in real time, which can be accessed anywhere through the website, such as for the mobile phone and iPad. And when we off mode, we can operate the hydro and solar individually. In future, the battery storage will integrate with the system also to enhance the efficiency of the hybrid generation. Now, let's look into our first pilot project at Silinthorn Dam. We installed 55 megawatt solar capacity hybrid with the existing 66 watt hydropower located at Silinthorn Dam in Ubon Ratchathani province of Thailand. We use the area about 720 square meters, covering only 5.27% of the total water surface. Project connect to the ICAT system and the cost around 1,147 million baht. This one including for the EPC, EMS, and operating equipment and orchard. And this project is finished already. It starts for the COD since 31st October 2021. This project installed in water suppress and separate for the 7 island actual on the left picture. Before designing for the main equipment, the basic information that we need from the dam, we require for the type of dam, the depth, the water levels, and wind speed in area. Now we have a look to the main equipment for the first pilot, including double glass monocrystalline PV. Next is for we use for the HDPE water. It's a food grade and safe, eco-friendly, and with the UV protection more than 25 years. The next composition is bottom entering. We design with the deadweight concrete. We connect with the stainless steel rope. And the main equipment, another one is central inverter. For this one is used for the central inverter, and then connect to the 22 kV switch here on the lands, and connect to the existing system and 115 kV substation. This is comprised of for the main equipment of our project. I will show you for some main activity to make understand our project more. First is the mooring system. It uses the deadweight concrete to ensure the floating solar islands. That is how we do. First is make for the deadweight concrete at the design, pouring the concrete and into the mold and form the deadweight concrete. That is we do at the site, at the project site. And then we move to storage area. For the next, we load to the transport bars. We use for the small bar to transport to the big one in the our reservoir. And for number 4, we lift to the main bars with the cranes. This one is the position that we put down for the deadweight concrete in here. Number 5, before we put down, we have to adjust the position of the main bar to which we have for the accurate position first and drop concrete by the GPS location. That is complete the process of the mooring system. This is the first job that we have to do before we start for connecting with the PV module. This is another main activity that we have to do. PV floating system. This slide illustrates installation of the PV floating system. We assemble the PV module section by section before install at the location. First step, we prepare for the assembly platform. This site is used around 5 platforms. And next, we assemble the float for the number 2. We assemble the float PV module for section by section. Then we move to the section to installation area. This project we use for the jet ski to help us to push down to make sure the force of the when the installation is very soft, when we can control the installation. And then we move section by section to installation area, connect section together, and secure the mooring system in the last. And another main activity that we have done before the COU, we have to check and commission the system to perform in both the onshore and offshore, and test the quality of equipment, wiring connection, and grounding system. And this we show you for some video to understand more other project in detail. That is also we have for the burn green energy to achieve the improve this first benefits of our system, and we can reduce for the CO2 about 47,000 tons per year and reduce water evaporation for 60,000 cubic meters per year also. Besides this, we improve for the community quality of life and stimulate local economy with the new landmark that you can see on the medium on the picture. We create for the nature walkway in these areas, and we use this one nearby the project to serve as a new landmark, attracting for the tourists for enjoying natural scene and view the floating solar project. The walkway is designed as a summarized sun shape with the quick gas at the end of its way. The highlight is just for the check-in spot for the people who love taking photos. And the project also serves for the new learning center to promote the better understanding for renewable energy also. We have to download my Photovoltaics for the 16 project with the total capacity 2,725 megawatts. This project is located in origin of Thailand, even to the north, northeast, west, and south. The first pilot project is finished already at Swinton Dam. We completing the 31st October last year. And now we are moving to develop for the second project as Ubunas Dam. This project I'm doing for the beginning. The highlight of this project is to combine the battery storage into a hybrid system also to increase stability of the power generation. The project in the bidding process and expect to get for the APC by end of this year, and we start for the COD by the next year. And the other project is the gathering develop advanced. Note that this project covers the water surface of the reservoir only 1 or 2%, so that is still new potential for the future operation expand to increase more renewable capacity of the country. Our project in the future is have faced for many challenges, such as for the larger capacity. The next project is built over 100 megawatts. And another is that deeper water levels. Normally, like this project, we start with the level only 30 meters, and for the next project, it will up to 100 meters, as well as the auto entering this site to consider with the values of the condition of the site by site. Apart from that, new technology is integrated to the project. We need for the technology to enhance more stability and efficiency of the power generation also. As right now, we try to apply with the battery. But in the future, if we have any kind of energy storage, we will be combined with our system also. Hydropower solar hybrid is the new trend that can contribute to expansion of the floating solar hybrid. And undoubtedly, it plays important role in driving China toward to the carbon neutrality future. For anyone waiting to reach out to me, here is my contact. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next presenter is Ms. Sasha, who is Asia Pacific Director at SunGrow. Ms. Sasha, over to you.
Thank you, Emily. So, hi, good morning, every audience. And thank you for invite to be this event and sharing SunGrow, our technology and our experience, especially on floating PV sections. And also thank you for Mr. Chachai Mawang from EGATE, just for sharing the kind of the floating PV plus hydro dam, these application scenarios. And actually, for floating PV, since SunGrow we established and also start the floating PV technology for overall already past 6 years. So we can find actually now the overall market, no matter is the floating or ground mounted, and also some energy storage plus application. So the overall trade is actually very harsh about the cost concerns and cost pressures. So we may get the analysis from Bloomberg. We may find that no matter is for the almost all the clean energy, no matter is the PV or floating or ground mounted or even some wind power. So we may find actually the cost concerns and cost trade actually is on the decreased trade. And also we can find in next 10 years, all the application actually is this kind of a trade. Unless, so although now there's ongoing uncertain supply chain issues and uncertain global logistic issues, but overall the trade is actually giving no matters from our technology provider and vendor, also for some developer investors. So this kind of the trade is well becoming within the next 10 years. And also we may find there's the especially for floating PV, we may find actually is a starting point. We may start back to 2017, and we may find there's 6 years past, then it's already a big increase installation capacity. And also from the DNV analysis, the next 5 years until 2030. So there will be around 30 gigawatts installation capacity globally. And among that, we may find Asia is another big market, especially for floating PV. And we have this kind of a big potential and also have the cost impact. So how we may dealing with these backgrounds and to develop floating PV. So actually the market always may understand that to develop the single project with large scale may help to have a better LCOE and the better ROI from the developer point of view. But and also another point is to have to come with the near shore, because now no matter it's the natural lake or the rivers, so actually the area is still not that abundant, but the sea is always unuseless, widely used application, which now we may find actually in China, some local government or cities already released some policies and special tariff, especially for the onshore or offshore wind solar farm. So this kind of combination applications. So especially in Shandong province, so they already released a very clearly policy for the wind solar combination application. So actually this will be a signal that we may more focusing on these sea application scenarios. Okay, so just now there's two big application. One is on the large scale, which hydro dam is definitely a good choice. Another is the sea. So to utilize these two applications, so there are some challenges to the floating PV technology. So the first is kind of the high variations. We may find, especially for the hydro dam, so actually the water always have a very big variation. So around 20 or more than 20 is a very common conditions. So how to make sure that our system is a safety enough within such kind of application? It's a one task that similar like Sungrow, this kind of a technology solution, we need to solve and figure out. And As for the nearshore and floating PV on the sea, the task will be more harsh for our vendors. We may like there is a challenge from the wave height, and also in some northern seashores, so also have some ice load impact in the winter. And also we also have the strong wind condition. So those are all the challenges that when we deploy the floating PV on the sea. So with all these challenges, so Sungrow, we always focusing and to dealing with this kind of challenges into the real solutions. So here is a diagram of our standardized floating PV solutions. So we may find actually, so there's the special well-organized cable route, and also we have the floating inverter and MV station platform, which mostly utilize this kind of the large-scale floating solar, which can help to reduce the LCOE and the BOS cost. And speaking of the floating PV, and very biggest challenges is on the mooring and anchoring solutions. So from Sungrow point of view, so we developed this kind of segmented elastic rope design, which this design can help us to, more adapt with these high and low water level conditions. And also in some of the hydro dam, so as the dam always builds in the mountain areas, so the underwater condition is very slope and some unforeseen conditions. So our anchoring mooring system may also need to adapt within the high elevation condition. So from this left side, bottom left picture, this kind of a simulation for the Sungrow floating system simulation. So we may find actually the mooring chain and mooring rope and anchors is not on the same elevations. So which give us the challenges that how each anchoring rope and the mooring rope can be adapted within the different load conditions. So this will bring and brings a lot of tasks to all our design team, and which we have developed this kind of segment mooring solution, which also been verified with kind of software simulation to verify and to check actually this kind of solution can suitable to this kind of application scenario. And also expect some simulation software. Our tests also being verified by some real tests on the laboratory. Especially the mounting structures of the panels. And also we have this kind of a hydrodynamic experiment, and this experiment will help us within this hydrodynamics condition, every connection point and every point of the floating system, what kind of a load capacity of each point, which this data collected will help and the combination with this simulation, which we have the simulation on the computer, and also we utilize this real test data, which we combine these two data to verify actually what kind of the real input and the real load is necessary to put into floating solar. And here is some short video to show our test on the laboratory, especially how to utilize the wave loads. And for the near shore and the sea water condition, the floating solar, actually another challenge is the wave height. as the wave actually will occur from two aspects. The firstly is the wind. We always know that wind will impact and influence the wave height. And so to dealing with the wave height, actually the normal anchoring mooring system can, no matter what kind of strengthen method we have, the conventional anchoring mooring solution cannot withstand this kind of high and big wave height. So to utilize the floating solar on the sea, so somehow we need to have this kind of wave breaker solutions. So that's why we also tested and to install this kind of 25 kilowatt small floating PV array in China, which is in Zhejiang province. We this small test will be is done the last year, and then in the past few months test, the highest wave height is can reach 1.6 meters, and actually within the wave this kind of test, we check whether the system without this wave breaker solution, what kind of system can moving on and what kind of impact to every connection point. And after this test, some will also have another test, which is 154 kilowatts and in Tianjin, northern China, which we find actually surround the floating PV. When we found there is wave breaker solutions. Actually, we want to combine and compare two solutions, which with the wave breaker and without the wave breaker, what kind of impact to the floating system. And this second test is ongoing, and after we collect enough information, we can share in next time another section. And for this anchor and mooring design, Sungrow is all done by our own team, and which we have expertise from the mooring industries. But we still want to hearing some third-party voice and recommendation. So that's why we also cooperate with some third-party consultant like DNV, which is a very professional consultant, especially for floating PV. So our design methodology also been verified by DNV, which they have their GIP standard, which the standard is being formalized, specialized for floating PV, and our methodology also been verified following these standards. And the last section have this background. So what kind of Sungrow case study and case experience, especially on this combination application scenario. So first the case is just Mr. Chang Chai introduced from it's a E-Gate Sulintong Dam 58.5 megawatt floating PV. Actually, it's a successful story for the combination of the hydro dam plus floating solar, which also is a kind of a next train for a big massive floating PV application scenario. So we may find actually this project is located on the hydro dam, and it's only utilized a very small portion of the overall dam areas. So we may find there's the wind speed we design with a very harsh design wind speed with 42 meters per second. And also there are another challenging is the water variation. It's 27 meters. And this applications is a good reference to see, especially in some of the Asia countries like in Myanmar, in Cambodia. They also have a lot of hydro dam, but this hydro dam may faces the issues that, especially in dry season, maybe the electricity is not and cannot meet the requirement of local consumptions. So this kind of combination with floating PV made a good choice to solve these issues. Another is one of the reference in Taiwan, which located on the sea. actually it's a Bay Area, so the wave load still not quite as harsh as the real open sea conditions. But the challenging of this project is as it's a Bay Area, so within the daytime, you only have few hours that the really have the sea water and it's a floating. But most of the time, the solar farm actually is purely landed. So that's challenging to dealing with this project. And actually, this project, another challenging is as is the salt water on the sea. So we how to deal with this anti-erosion. It's challenges that our design team faced. And also the last challenge is for the anchor mooring, as the most of the time it will be landed, and only a few hours of the day it will be floating. So how to accommodate this floating solar anchor mooring solutions? So we have developed a kind of special utilized for this kind of scenario, and especially for the anchor mooring solutions. And the last is our another benchmark in Singapore. This more environmental harmonious to the floating PV, as the project located on the drinking water reservoirs. So which we the Singapore government also have few years studies, and also our system and our products also be designed to meet with the food grade and environmental friendly solutions. So in this will be a kind of a good reference for some countries and some application in the drinking water conditions. And in the last Sangro floating PV, so in the past 6 years, we supported 1.7 gigawatt floating PV. So we would like to share our experience and also hearing the industry voice to optimize the technology and to help to develop better floating PV solution. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sasha. We're now ready to begin our panel discussion where Zika Gajanku will moderate. Thank you all for your excellent questions throughout the event, and our speakers will address your questions live during the panel. And we'll also be joined by Uma Rajaratnam, who is the Vice President and Global Head of Applied Research and Collaboration at Enzyme Global Solutions, to answer panel questions as well. So I will now pass the mic to Zika, who will moderate our panel today. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Emily, and thank you to all the speakers for the really wonderful presentations. I'm very excited for the last 20 minutes we have with you all today to dive into some of the questions that came up during the presentations. So before we kind of go into more technical questions, I want to ask a few broader questions to both of you. The first is, how do you see the FPV market evolving in the next couple of years? Ms. Sasha, you kind of touched on Sungrove's work just across the globe really, but in Asia specifically. And Ms. Uma, you are kind of leading a How do you see the market evolving? Okay. How do you see the market evolving in your specific geographical context?
Thank you, Zika, for the questions. So actually for the floating PV, the next trend, I can say different region, different countries may more suitable to develop their own application scenarios. Like Sangro, we in Asia countries, like in Indonesia, in Malaysia, this kind of country that it in itself may have a very abundant resources of the hydro dam, and also the water resources are very good. So I can say in this kind of countries, to this combination of the hydro dam and floating will be a good choice and good application, and may not to utilize actual resources to do floating PV. And let's say to moving to the Middle East, So example, another market is in the Middle East. It's that region is the most of time the floating PV may have some additional impact and benefit to help and to reduce the water evaporations. So that's the floating PV always in the Middle East is located on the reservoirs, especially for the drinking or irrigations. So I can say, let's say for the Europe, so I read there's an initiative from Germany to also to utilize this kind of mining lake.
I believe we may have lost Ms.
So I can a good application.
Great, thank you. Ms. Uma?
Yes, I say there are the trend, there are three things. One, in the next decade, the FSPV market is seeing a rapid growth. According to the market report, the CAGR will be over 100%. And the second thing is Asia, Southeast Asia, particularly Southeast Asia market is emerging to be the hot market. So a lot of developments are happening. And the third thing is from the smaller size, from the kilowatt size installation to large size installation. So megawatt level projects are in the pipeline. So these are the major trends. And also like with the rapid growth, the price is also falling.
Great, thank you both for those responses. And so kind of thinking about that as well, we know that, both of you mentioned, we're going to probably start seeing, and we're already seeing larger project size installations. We're seeing kind of different regions have different priorities, but even regardless of that, we're seeing kind of hydro and hybrid play an important role, and we're also seeing prices continue to drop. But we've had a few questions come in around kind of the potential environmental impacts and thinking about that. So 2 questions to you are, what are some of the enduring research questions you think we really need to answer to support deployment in this space, and really also build public trust and get that community buy-in in FPV deployment? So the specific things that have been mentioned is kind of thinking about the potential impacts of the different kinds of materials you're using for the flotation devices, but also thinking about water quality. If any of your various teams or groups or institutions are conducting detailed studies to look into those issues.
Yes. The long-term impacts of the floating solar plant on the water body is not very well understood. There are the studies which are coming up, and though there are the positive impact is high, but still the long-term impact on the environmental and the social impacts need to be studied and documented. And also the knowledge sharing will help in boosting this market. And the second thing is about the lack of standards and also guidance document, which is still in the evolving phase. And in the recent years, of course, a lot of efforts have been taken, and the standards are evolving. So this is also some of the barriers which when we address, this will help in supporting this market.
Great, thank you. Ms. Sasha?
Yeah, just like Ms. Uma just introduced and mentioned. So the second point, very important, lack of standards. So actually for the China, so like our domestic market, we have deployed the standard, especially for floating PV, no matter is from the system design or from the manufacturing standard for the float, the product itself. So, but the international standard, I can say, like my slides shared. So DNV, like a third-party consultants, they also initiative to do this kind of standard. it's more like a recommendation practice, but so far cannot be seen real standard. But most of the, no matter is from developer side, from investor side, from lender side, they start to following this kind of recommendation practice. And also like the TUV, this kind of third party, they also have kind of self-running standard, especially for float structures. So I can say from the lack of standard, the next task is to how to utilize this ongoing recommendation practice, or for some domestic or some small region utilize standard to become this kind of worldwide or the very common utilized standard like IEC, like ISO, this kind of widely used, so we can help the floating PV to expanding to develop further.
Thank you. Yeah, those are both really helpful responses. And I think both of you kind of stressed on the need for robust and consistent standards across the board to really help deployment, and also start to think about how do we make sure that different projects are really adhering to an international standards when we think more about the impact side and thinking about the potential environmental impacts, and also just the need again for continued research, research from the developers, research from different institutions across the world. So there's so many different water body types that FPV systems can be installed on. And so it's a very exciting research space, but the research also needs to really keep pace with the really huge growth in the deployment. So keeping pace with that growth to really make sure that potential adopters have, they're having their answers questioned, or their questions answered in terms of potential impacts. So I want to switch gears a little bit, or I'll do that shortly, but the last kind of broader question, and Ms. Uma, you kind of mentioned knowledge sharing is really important. My question to both of you is, where do you see kind of regional collaboration or just any kind of collaboration playing a role in answering some of these questions? In your experience, what are some of the successful examples you've seen about how collaboration has helped answer, whether it's FPV specific questions or questions pertaining to other emerging technologies that you think could apply here moving forward?
Yes, I totally agree that the regional collaboration on the knowledge sharing is very, very important, especially the guidance and standards are evolving, and any information and best practices shared widely will help. One example is even now the Singapore Energy Research Institute developed a document is they're used as the guidance document for looking into how the feasibility studies have to be conducted and how to assess. So these are the still in the evolving one. So that type of the knowledge sharing will be very useful. And the second thing is also the local manufacturing is also one of the limitations. Still the cost is the high. So that's where the instead of the importing, the manufacturing and collaboration will be, the supply from the Asia hub will also help. So these are the two things which I see the regional collaboration will help in boosting this market.
Great, thank you. Ms. Sasha?
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with what Mayo just highlighted, this kind of regional collaborations. So actually, I also totally agree with one of the successful experience for the Singapore projects. So I can say for the Singapore Tengah project, so from the very beginning, Sungrow have started to involve in this since back to 2017. At that time, the Singapore government and the PUB all already started to develop and to study what kind of impact the floating PV can have to this kind of drinking water solutions. So I can say I saw from the Singapore stories from the governmental side is already have a very well organized step by step what kind of study to do and what kind of no matters from system, from the vendors. So they have a very clearly planning to utilize and to finally to develop and to decide actually to do this floating PV will no impact to my very curious resources for the drinking water. And I can say this has a good examples. And I also, Sangro also experienced some not success story, which the project actually is abandoned by the local no guideline. And from the policy regulations, there's no guideline whether it's good to go floating on the dam, on the reservoir or not. So there's no clearly guideline. So also blocks, even though some project already been awarded. So due to this unclear guideline, so the developer have no choice to moving to choose other lakes or the applications. So I can say this comparison will bring us further thinking that to develop and to help the floating PV to moving forward, actually from the governmental and regulation side cannot be ignored. That's always they will have their study and helps all the electricity industries to give some guideline which can moving further. And the second thing I want to share is about the local manufacturing or local supply chain issues. From Sangro point of view, we also suffer because of this global supply chain issues, especially after COVID. So no matter is container related issues or the global sea freight increase dramatically, and also from the supply chain uncertain, unstable supply chain. So all this background will give us a good thinking that how to deal with the global supply chain and to utilize the local resources. So now our no matter from technical and procurement, the supply chain engineering always to think and to deploy in every country we find the local resources which we have as much as options which we can have a plan.
Great, thank you. Thank you for highlighting those potential areas. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for highlighting those potential areas for some research collaboration, whether it's on kind of supply chain considerations, again, kind of standards, thinking about local manufacturing opportunities and so on. I think you kind of both highlighted the need for working regionally and just really leaning on each other as an industry and as a growing industry and taking advantage of lessons learned and regulatory practices being developed across the world, really. So I have different questions for each of you at this point. So I'll throw them both to you, but we'll start with Ms. Uma. So to you, Ms. Uma, the question is, given what we discussed about some of the current barriers to deployment for FPV, there's a question about why not just stick to ground mount PV? So that's your question, and I'll come back to you, but wanted to share, Ms. Sasha, your question before we go back to Ms. Uma. And your question, Ms. Sasha, is in your presentation, you kind of touched on some intertidal projects, but attendee noted that intertidal areas are typically really important for migratory birds. So did your projects consider the potential loss of habitat due to their installation, and what were the findings? So that's a question for you, Ms. Sasha. So we'll go back to you, Ms. Uma, on why FPV if all of these barriers, why not just stick with ground mount?
It has a lot of an advantage, when we compare to the even the efficiency aspect, and then the growing land cost and other things. So definitely this has an advantage, and also like the infrastructure. So exploring and leveraging this will be like helpful in meeting the aggressive solar target in the country, and also renewable energy targets. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yes, you put it succinctly that there are drawbacks, but there are also incredible benefits that if we kind of answer those questions, FPV is really poised to be another really great renewable energy option. And so throwing it back to you, Ms. Sasha, any response to the question on the intertidal projects and potential impacts on migratory beds?
Sorry, Sika, can I have a question again? Sorry.
Yes, no problem. So there was a question about, you mentioned some projects have kind of involved intertidal areas, and there was a question about whether those projects kind of considered potential impacts on the migration of birds, and if so, what were some of your findings?
Okay, you mean those projects in some intertidal condition?
Yes.
Okay, so for Sangro, which we occurred and experienced, it is kind of application like the hydro dam plus floating, and also this saltwater plus floating. So this kind of I can say the first issue is still is how from the regulation side, whether it's open to utilize this and also to be technology accessible. It's one thing that from the later side, I can say from no matter it's from the developer side or from our solution provider side, we need to go together and to this utility or to this authority, at least to let them know. So actually this kind of combination do not impact to the safety issues. Like in some markets, I foresee experience. So some like the hydro dam. So the dam owners or dam authority, they may concern whether deploy this kind of new system will impact the dam safety, as it's the most critical issues. So that's why it's more like some before and pre FS, and we need to utilize and to get this utility or authority involved in. It's I can say is a key point that we need to attention.
Great, thank you. Kind of working with regulatory agencies at the very beginning is key. I see that we're out of time. There were a number of questions we couldn't get to, and so we will share these with the moderator, both of you, so that you can kind of answer them following this, and then we will share them with the folks who sent those questions in. So please, if your question did not get answered live, we will follow up by email with the responses. I will hand it over to Emily, but just want to say again a big thank you to both of you for joining this panel discussion and really lending your expertise to this event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks everyone for your participation in the panel. Michelle, would you be able to display our speaker's contact information on the screen? Great. Okay, so here is our speaker's contact information in case you would like to get in touch. And we would also like to invite you to keep in touch by joining the USAID NREL partnership mailing list at the link listed on the slide, and to also follow NREL on LinkedIn and Twitter to stay up to date on our research and projects. And finally, I would like to extend a huge thank you to our presenters and especially our attendees for joining the session. We couldn't have made it happen without you, and we greatly appreciate your time and hope you can take some valuable insights back to your organizations. Thank you very much, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.